This is Sporting Life.
Well, welcome along to the Sporting Life Racing Podcast. It's Royal Ascot chat this week, looking at some of the big news lines, potential news lines at next week's great meeting. We'll also hear it again from Oisin Murphy, Ben Linfoot speaking to Oisin later on in the show to get an early sight of his book at Ascot and one or two other news lines to discuss. But before then, in the company of Matt Brocklebank, Graham Cunningham, David Johnson and Billy Nash, will be diving headlong into next week, but not straight away, GC, because the great game continues to deliver news stories and two significant departures since last week's podcast. Not Ed Chamberlain from his seat on this panel, but we've lost Julie Harrington at the BHA going at the end of the year. Nevin Truesdale stepping down from the Jockey Club on a similar timeline. I don't know. In terms of the health of the sport, does this reflect anything, do you feel?
It has to, yeah. Morning all. Hope everyone's doing well. Yeah, looking forward to hearing from Oisin. He'll have plenty to smile about at Ascot next week, I'm sure. No, it's never a dull moment. I'm not sure how many people are madly keen on racing politics, so I'll keep it fairly brief. Julie Harrington's reign has been checkered at best. It's not been without positives. I think there are early signs that the fairly minor tinkering with the fixture list might be helping the small field problem. If we get really hot weather, that could change things. But at the moment, that's a positive. Depending on your view on the whip, I think the BHA team will think they've done a good job with that. They've imposed far stricter, more stringent guidelines and are getting fewer bans. That was their aim, and they've won on that. But there are lots of other things. I think Premier Racing, Premierisation is a busted brand. Affordability checks, that's not my specialised area of knowledge. David will touch on the PR side of this, I think. But I'd rather broaden it out and not just touch on the departure of Julie Harrington, which will come at the end of the year. The Jockey Club's chief exec, Nevin Truesdale, did he fall or was he pushed? I suspect he might have been pushed in the direction of the outdoor by a new regime at the Jockey Club. He's leaving at the end of the year. Nevin Truesdale. We've got Joe Samara-Smith. He'll leave in the spring of 25. He's got some serious health issues to contend with. Good luck with that to Joe Samara. Rod Street has left his role as the boss at Great British Racing. And I don't know anything about the Race Owners Association, but their governor, Charlie Liverton, has also moved on to pastures news. So I don't think it's too strong to say there is a leadership crisis at the top of British racing when you have five key leadership figures in the sport, all either gone or going. That adds up to a real problem, no question.
And do you see touch on it there, especially in terms of Julie Harrington? Increasingly, we saw Nevin Truesdale during the Animal Rising last year take centre stage. But how important is it going to be for the successors, those who follow in their footsteps, the ability to handle the PR, that side of the role?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely crucial. And if one of the things that Julie Harrington really struggled with, it was being on the front foot in front of the cameras and sort of being really strong and being able to get that message across that she needed to. And it's something that we're seeing so much, not just in horse racing, and you see it notably so in the build up to the election. It's not just what you're doing, it's being able to tell people how you're doing it and that kind of thing. And you know, we see some of the people that have been involved in running the racing at the moment, the likes of Martin Crudis, has always been really good at being on the front foot. You see him interviewed at the races, and you know, the likes of Matt Chapman. He keeps the likes of Matt Chapman well in his box, kind of. Some people, you know, at the BHA, the likes of Julie Harrington, they haven't even been talking to Matt Chapman. You know, that's where they've been on the subject. So I think whatever they do next time, they're going to have to get someone that is very good in front of the camera and not just getting all the praise behind the scenes, which has been a key feature, I think, of what we've seen of a lot of people who've been coming out and praising Julie Harrington. It's all been what she's been doing behind the scenes rather than what we've been able to see.
Good point, that, David. Very good.
And I'm sure there'll be more on those stories later on in the year. But before then, Billy, and before Royal Ascot, news at Aden, well, it's a different route. City of Troy, that we muted, it might be happening last week on the podcast. Confirmation, Coral Eclipse next. Not the normal step for Ballydoyle Derby winner.
Not the normal step, but I think a good one, Dave. Personally, I'm delighted to see him running in the Eclipse. I think he adds an awful lot to that race, but also it gives it, you know, it opens up intriguing possibilities for him down the line. One of the most interesting things I thought about the decision Ballydoyle came to and the lads came to was that Chad Brown was involved in the decision. So obviously the Travers Stakes had been mooted as a possibility. Clearly, Chad thinks his contender is good enough to win that race. So I think they've put that one on the back burner. Aidan says City of Troy is still a bit green, still needs to learn a bit. But let's face it, he'll face no easy task in the Coral Eclipse. There's only been 4 Derby winners have completed the double in like Millreef, Nashwan, Sea the Stars, and Golden Horn. He's trying to, you know, emulate some pretty illustrious racehorses there. So it won't be a cakewalk for him. I think personally, I think it's the right race for him. I think dropping back to a mile and a quarter around Sandown will really suit him. And you know, we'll find out more about him. Is he the superstar that they keep telling us he is? Well, if he can win the Eclipse and win it convincingly, then he probably is. Like I said, it opens up plenty of possibilities for the rest of the year. And the Breeders' Cup Classic apparently is still kind of front and centre when it comes to the big games for the autumn.
And Matt, that was the other exciting angle to this. Aidan said Sandown, then York or Leopardstown and the Breeders' Cup Classic. That's one scratch they've been desperate to itch.
Oh, absolutely. I tell you what,
It's
one
just
race hasn't been mentioned, a part of it. One race hasn't been mentioned at all with City of Troy, and he's anti-post favourite for with most firms, is the Arc de Triomphe. I suspect that isn't going to be part of their thinking with him there. But yeah, the Breeders' Cup Classic, that'll be absolutely fantastic to see him go over and do that. And this is another sort of reason to believe that they do think this horse is just something extraordinary, something that they've not had before. And as we mentioned towards the end of last season, when they sort of even said he could be along the lines of their Frankel. Well, you know, this is going to be the campaign that really defines that, isn't it? And who knows if we see him at 4, but what he does at 3 is going to be absolutely fantastic.
And Billy, the crisis in Irish racing that began with the British domination of the Mayor's Novice Hurdle, it's still rippling through. Alan Sweetman in the Racing Post bemoaning the fact that City of Troy isn't going to the Irish Derby and that it's a race in rapid decline. Is there a steering group set up yet to save the Irish Derby?
Oh, there probably is. I don't know, to be honest. I wouldn't necessarily agree that it's in rapid decline. I don't think that the race is broken as such, but it can certainly be improved upon. And they do need to have a look at it. No, it's not going to be a quick fix, whatever they do with the Irish Derby. I think one of the main issues that the Irish Derby has faced in recent years, I think in its heyday, the 90s, early 2000s, it was a fantastic race where you very often got the winner of the Epsom Derby and the winner of the Jockey Club coming together at the Curragh. Unfortunately, since the French dropped the distance of the Prix de Jockey Club in 2005, I think it was, practically, I don't think any actual French Derby winner has come to the Curragh since. They've dried up overnight, so that's a big issue that they're facing. I don't think this year's Irish Derby is going to be an absolute disaster either. It looks as if we'll have the 2nd, 3rd and 4th from Epsom coming, so it's going to be a very competitive race in its own right. But I think Ballydoyle have been probably good and bad for the Irish Derby. I was looking back at the stats this morning. From 1980 to 1999, there were 14 overseas trained winners of the Irish Derby. Now, in 97, O'Brien trained his first Irish Derby winner, courtesy of Desert King. From 2000 to last year, 2023, there have been 4 overseas winners of the Irish Derby. And that's largely because of Aidan O'Brien's domination. He has pretty much swept all before him for the Irish Derby. So I think there's a lot that they can do. Like, for example, this year we had the Gordon Classic run at Gordon Park a couple of weeks ago. The winner of that race, it's a new race in the Irish calendar, the winner of that race got free entry into the Irish Derby. I think that's something they can maybe look at for let's say, overseas races, or, you know, have some sort of a qualification system or point system like they have in the Kentucky Derby. But like I say, all these things are going to take time. I don't think the race is necessarily broken, but they do have to have a little look at it and maybe rejig it slightly to just bring it back to the status that it had kind of around the turn of the century.
Can I chip in on this, lads? I know Alan quite well. I like him. That phrase, cringing embarrassment, just screamed of a clickbait phrase to me. A cringing embarrassment, right? Now, I know it may not have the depth, as Billy's touched on with good data there, the depth it used to have, but have a look at the last 3 winners. Forgive me if I look down at 1 or 2 notes, but this is what they've achieved. Gus Rodin last year wasn't that impressive, but he went on to win a high-quality Irish Champion Stakes and a Breeders' Cup turf. White Birch didn't get a chance to shine that day. He was hampered in a melee. He is now one of the elite middle-distance horses in Europe. That was last year. The year before, Westover put up a powerful performance to win by 7 lengths. After that, he finished second to the Mighty Equinox in Dubai. He won the Grand Prix de Saint-Cloud. He was second in the King George, beaten a head or a short head in a mighty duel with Huckham. And he was second in the Arc. And Tuesday, who also ran the race, went on to win at the Breeders' Cup. And the year before that, Hurricane Lane, who was the winner, he won the Grand Prix de Paris by 6. He won the Leger by nearly 3. And he was third, beating 3 parts of a length in the Arc, having been checked in his run. And not to mention High Definition, of course, who ran that year. And he shaped up really nicely in a novice hurdle at Percy Warner Park recently. So the point I'm making is, you know, I'm of a certain vintage. I'm very conscious of the fact that the rose-colored glasses syndrome is dangerous. You can always look back to a so-called golden era when the current era, it might not be quite what you wanted it to be, but cringing embarrassment is way, way over the top.
Over the top to describe this next segment as that. It's Ben Linfoot talking to title leader Oisin Murphy, who's flying about now. Anyway, over to you, Ben and Oisin, and what have you got for us this week?
Yeah, thanks very much, Dave. I am indeed joined by Oisin Murphy again in his now regular slot. I think we can call it that now, Oisin. And it's been a good week for you. You've been firing in the winners.
Yeah, thank God, Ben. It's been great. Obviously, a very important time of year, and you want to keep the momentum going with Royal Ascot literally only a few days away. So it's high pressure at the moment.
Yeah, the lads have been chatting about Royal Ascot. We'll definitely get onto that. We're going to pick out 3 or 4 of your most interesting rides next week. But first of all, just a little bit of reflection, because you won on Queen of the Pride at Haydock on Saturday, and she showed a fantastic attitude to get the job done.
Yeah, she's very lightly raced with only having 4 starts, and she probably still learning and I hope improving. And I was delighted, obviously, to get that black type victory, bearing in mind she's out of Simple Verse, who won 2 Group 1s, and by Roaring Lion, who won 4 Group 1s. So it'd be nice if she could continue on that sort of trajectory, and particularly with those big staying races against fillies coming up later in the year, I'd hope she can make that jump up in class.
Do you think she's a bit like her dam then, in the way that she's got good staying power? You do think as she steps up in trip again, she might improve again?
Yeah, and I think she's a better mover than her mother, and she's not as hot either. She's very even tempered, so she's going to give herself the chance, provided the engine improves a little bit of making that jump up in class.
Okay, before we move on to Royal Ascot, let's just chat about this weekend, because you're off over to Chantilly on Sunday for the Prix de Diane, and you're riding Tanfana for David Manoussier, who wrote she ran a really good race, really, didn't she, in the English 1,000 guineas?
Yeah, she was really tenacious in the Kipco 1,000 guineas. She got behind and she finished off well. It was suited to come from off the pace that day. The winner came from a long way back as well. I rode her in a prep race over 7 furlongs in France a couple of months ago, and very happy with her there. So I know her well, and I've ridden her work a lot. She's a standout ride, and hopefully she gets some luck in running. And I think she deserves to be favoured. She's likely to go off favoured, and I think the distance will suit her, and she goes on all types of ground. So it's great to be getting the leg up on her.
Yeah, big chance. Good luck with her this weekend, Oisin. Right then, Royal Ascot. And I guess first thing to say is no Frankie Dettori. And for a jockey like yourself, that must be a big thing, really, because over the years you've been competing against Frankie, and he's the sort of jockey who can just get on a roll and deny you winners. And he can also, he's such a big name, he can also nick winners off you before you've even got on a horse.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We often compete for the same rides, and you know, he's the go-to jockey around the world, and particularly in the US at the moment. So the fact he's going to be on the sidelines at Ascot is going to be very different for us. We're used to him being center stage. It's likely he's going to be there in person, obviously promoting his restaurants, and I'm sure he'll be in high demand to make appearances in corporate boxes. But yeah, it's different without him. Still ultra competitive. The likes of James Doyle, Ryan Moore, William Buick are set to have very strong books of rides.
Well, with no Frankie, you're arguably the go-to man yourself, and quite a few international trainers have been in touch ahead of Royal Ascot, and you are riding Ramatuelle in the Coronation Stakes. What a great ride to pick up.
Yeah, well, Sheikh Fahd owns a bit of her with NBA star Tony Parker, and Arthur Hoye, the bloodstock agent, has a piece of her, and there's, I think, Monceau Henri Bozo owns some of her as well. So there's a large ownership group, and it was discussed maybe I'd have ridden her already in her career, but for whatever reason it hasn't happened. And I think a mile round a bend should suit her. She has great form. It's a very open race, very competitive race. Some real standouts. I think Upper Singer is towards the top of the market. She looked very good as a 2-year-old and maybe needed her reappearance run this year. And obviously you have the Guineas winner El Malka in there. And then maybe Ramatuelle is third favourite, and Porta Fortuna, who obviously ran so close to her, and I know her very well, in there in the mix as well. So you can't discount any of them. And I just hope I can get Ramatuelle to relax, and if I can do that, then I think she can run very well.
Yeah, another one in the Group 1s is Asfura in the King Charles III Stakes.
She has very good form in Australia, and we obviously respect those Australian sprinters when they come up to Europe. She felt very good this week. I sat in her Tuesday morning. I just went 4 furlongs on her, but she's fit. I thought her reappearance run at Haydock was okay. She was probably not ready on ground that was too slow. So it was great to get the call up from Henry Dwyer to ride her.
And another one for Australian connections is Kitty Rose in the Sandringham Stakes, and she brings really good graded form into a handicap.
Yeah, she Irish filly. She was very well looked after by Craig Bryson and Natalie Lupini, and Michael Kent got his hands on her, and they bought a proper filly. And it takes a group filly to win the Sandringham, and she's already that. So hopefully she can carry the sort of weight she's going to have, close to top weight, if not top weight. And I couldn't really choose anything over her in the race, given a free hand. So thanks to them for choosing me.
And I promise you, we're not doing a full book of Oisin Murphy rides for Royal Ascot. So we'll finish on Cassia for Andrew Baldwin in the Queen Mary, and she's nicely bred filly.
Yeah, she won at Nottingham the other day. Rob Hornby rode her. She's a half to Chaldean, who we won the Kipcoat. Well, I didn't ride him, but the Kipcoat 2000 guineas for Andrew Baldwin. Frankie actually partnered him. And she's shown a lot of speed. She's got a good temperament. It's going to take a bit of winning, but I quite like her. So hopefully, she'll go there as one of the leading lights, I think.
Great stuff. Thanks, Oisin. What's your one big hope for Royal Ascot next week? We'll finish on that one.
Well, I can't wait to ride Middle-earth in the Hardwick. I respect Continuous and whatever else lines up in the race, but he shouldn't have been able to win from his position at Newbury, and I think he'll have sharpened up for the race, and hopefully that'll be, putting him there with a strong chance.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot as always, Oisin. Good luck in France this weekend, and of course at Royal Ascot next week.
Thanks a million. Cheers, Ben.
Euro 2024 is here, and it's time for you to raise your game with Sporting Life's Euro 2024 betting guide, featuring a team-by-team breakdown covering all 24 nations. The guide also features key stats, most likely stage of elimination, expert betting selections with outright and golden boot fancies. Raise your game for the Euros with Sporting Life.
Cheers, Scoop, and on to our own Royal Ascot chat now. And David, on Tuesday afternoon, Aidan O'Brien, via the Ballydoyle Racing Twitter handle on the Coolmore website, they announced their entries for Ascot, their potential runners. And that was a refreshing change, wasn't it? Is it mapped out Tuesday to Saturday? What was likely to be heading over for the Aidan O'Brien team?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we understand obviously things might change and late minute decisions might lead to a few little alterations. But yeah, you know, they've got such strength in depth, haven't they, with their string, particularly the 2-year-olds. And it's really good that we know, for example, that Camille Pissarro and Tunbridge Wells are the pair that are being pointed to the Coventry, and that Whistle Jacket, who's looked so good in his starts to date, is heading to the Norfolk. And there is just that clarity for those that want to get involved early on. I'm sure they'll still keep us waiting to the very last minute for the jockey bookings, but at least knowing where these horses are going at this stage is a real positive, I think, for anybody that's looking to get involved.
And of all the meetings anyway in the world, it's probably the best start. Anyway, that Queen Anne, which gets us underway. Now, there's more questions and answers this year. Let's start with Inspiral and Big Rocker. We saw in the Lock-Inge, both bombed out to varying degrees. Do we just toss that to a side and give him a second chance?
Well, some people will, and it does pay off, you know, judge a horse on his or her best form than the most recent form. But I'm not quite so forgiving, and I don't find it that easy to just toss those two Newbury performances by Big Rock and Inspiral, where Inspiral bizarrely didn't follow her own pacemaker, who went on to win the race, Audience. And she was beaten 13 lengths, and Big Rock was even further back. So one or both of them could bounce back because they've both got high quality Ascot form. Big Rock would obviously suited by rain, and Inspiral has two excellent Royal Ascot performances. The Runaway Coronation Stakes win 2 years ago on the Round Mile, and the good second, first time out, behind Triple Time in the Queen Anne last year. But I thought they were pretty plain efforts at Newbury, and they will improve. They're bound to, but they've got a fair gap to close. And I'm of the mind that Sharon's bound to run well, and I think this Factor Cheval, the French horse, is definitely underrated based on what he did in Meydan a couple of months ago. He wasn't good enough to beat the best last season, and he was behind Big Rock in the QE2, but I'm sure he's a better horse nowadays. And the field he had behind him that day was high class. Namor, the Japanese Raider, is a high class, consistent globetrotter. Measured Time has won a big race. I know Luxembourg wasn't at his right trip. He's won the Coronation Cup. That Factor Cheval I think is a really interesting horse for the Queen Anne.
Matt, I'll involve you because you were part of the discussion. We had this last week about Inspire, and I just wonder if the Prince of Wales Stakes door might just have swung half open again to her with the defection of Passenger. Chris Richardson said there was commercial decisions, White Birch and Passenger, two sons of Ulysses at the head of the market. It's now one son of Ulysses, a ground-dependent one. The weather forecast at this stage, according to the Twitter experts, looks favourable or potentially favourable for him. But I just wonder, Johnny G's big dice, whether he might dust them off. He's after some rhythm and momentum for his season. He might need to get the big dice out.
Yeah, I wasn't totally sure how sort of serious that Prince of Wales's conversation was, but just because I've just a stiff 10 furlongs round Ascot it would be a new thing for her. I was so impressed with her, obviously, when she gunned down Warm Heart. That was a sensational performance at the Breeders' Cup, but it was very quick ground. It's a sharp track. This is very different test entirely. But it was that interview with Nick Luck when they were talking about he sort of doubled down, didn't he? He said we were thinking about Juddmonte Internationals and races like that later on. So it obviously has been a really serious conversation that they're having in the camp. And I think you're right. I think the Ulysses thing was absolutely spot on. I think Nick Luck probably saw that weeks away, long before people were sort of bringing her up as an anti-post proposition for that. I just think the Queen Anne just looks winnable, doesn't it? Maybe they will step her up later on in the year. I don't know which way they're going to go. I think they might stick with the Queen Anne now they've made that sort of made that call, but we'll see how it pans out. There is another horse that I wanted to bring into the conversation in the Queen Anne, and this Coudoir, shoulda, woulda, Coudoir for Simon and Ed Crisford. It's probably not been the year that they were hoping for just yet. It's been a bit of a slow burner, but there've been signs, haven't there, that they're sort of turning the corner and getting going. And this horse just has genuine Group 1 potential. He's the one that, where if you're looking at horses like Inspiral and Big Rot, horses that, you know, have question marks over them and do need to bounce back, if there are any frailties with those whatsoever, a horse like this, a real progressive, unbeaten, proper now horse, isn't he? A 4-year-old, lightly raced by Kingman. He was dead impressive, I thought. I think he won with a fair bit more to spare. He beat that Docklands in the trial there on Charles Day. Malgian back in third. He was obviously fairly well fancied, sent off 2-1, and Coudoir in the second silks came and won quite cosily, I thought, for William Buick, who was really positive about the horse afterwards. So yeah, he's got to be in the conversation as well. I think he's around 6 or 7-1, but yeah, we have to know where Inspiral's going because she's pretty key to this race.
David, in terms of Big Rock, the expulsion tool's been brandished to his rider. We've got an experienced pair of hands coming on for this Queen Anne. Could that potentially change things?
Potentially, yeah. I think a lot of people were surprised by how quickly the ground did dry up at Newbury, and we ended up calling it good to firm. Having, you know, there was chat about it being on the soft side of good earlier in the week, and so I think you can sort of forgive that, but you know, it is very unlikely that it's going to be as testing as what it was when he was so impressive in the QE2. So whether he can perform to that kind of level next week, I'd be surprised, but he may not have to as well, mightn't he? You know, this isn't a strong race by any means, and I mean, I've been banging the drum that Inspiral should go for the Prince of Wales, but when you look at the rivals that she might meet there, the likes of White Birch and Auguste Rodin, compared to what she'll run against here, you can sort of see why they're very much tempted to come for the Queen Anne, because it doesn't look like it's going to be a strong race. And Inspiral and Big Rock, they're well clear on the time form ratings, but there are doubts about them. And it just might be that this is going to be a below par Queen Anne. And, you know, with Charin in, he's in there as second favourite, I think, at about 9-2, and he's just had how many chances at Group 1 level, and he keeps coming up short. So if he was to win it, I think it'd just show that it is a below par renewal.
And Billy, just finally on this, she's obviously a big dart for the Gosden team. Inspiral will be desperate to get it right. He's made the point that his 3-year-olds are up to scratch this year. They were weak 2-year-olds last year. They've got nothing in that basket. The 2-year-olds, that they're not really up and running yet. The onus is on these older horses and older mares in particular to get their season, the stable season, up and running.
Yeah, I kind of feel sorry for Kieran Schumacher in a way, because, you know, he's in the sort of position that I suppose David Moyes found himself in at Man United, Unai Emery at Arsenal. You know, he's trying to take over from an all-time great, and it's not easy to fill those shoes, and especially with the ammunition that has been kind of landed in front of him. Gosden doesn't have a very deep team at the moment, as we can see. His 3-year-olds aren't great. The 2-year-olds, like you said, they haven't really started up yet. So he is relying on these horses. He is relying on the likes of Inspiral. You know, there'll be plenty of other rides or Gosden runners during the week that he won't get on because of various ownership deals and whatever. So, yeah, he needs a big performance from the likes of this mare. She's very capable of doing it. I'd be a bit, unlike GC, I'd be fairly happy to put a line through her run and Big Rock's run in the Lock-Inge. I think they're both better than that, and I'd be surprised if one or other of them wasn't fighting out the finish of this race next week.
Dave, get the points bag out. We need to spray a few points around this week, I think.
Well, we can bag the ones for the King's Stand already, can't we? So we're playing with the bookies' money now.
Back to Cheval, 1 point win. I'm going to save on Sharon. But that French horse 5-1, I think, is underrated. And if Inspiral defects, which is a possibility, then happy days.
Let's talk about the 3-year-old milers now, David. Let's start with St James's Palace, and we've got the rematch from Newmarket. Notable Speech versus Rosallion. He went on to win the Irish 2000. They're round a bend. That's what they're relying on to try to reverse that Newmarket form. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where you're looking at it, and Notable Speech is going to be a very tough nut to crack. The way that he won the Guineas, the strengths that he has, they're going to be seen to just as good effect, I think, around a bend as what Rosallion will be. And I'd be very surprised if Notable Speech could. I'll be very surprised, sorry, if Rosalian could turn that form around with Notable Speech. And what I'd really like to see here is Notable Speech put up the kind of performance that makes us all go wow, kind of, and you know, sets himself up for really taking on what is, in my opinion, a below par group of older horses. And he could be the kind of horse that we see go pretty much unbeaten throughout the season, maybe.
Matt, visually, it was very taking at Newmarket. What are you expecting at Ascot from him?
Yeah, I think he's got to be. He's your obvious favourite, isn't he? He genuinely had their measure. Like I don't think Rosalian had to improve much, if at all. If anything, he might even have been a pound or two below his Newmarket run when he won that at the Curragh. I think Notable Speech did have his measure fairly easily, and exactly what David says, the speed that he shows is really going to be well suited to this track. It's probably his to lose. I do think that there is potential, though, for him to put up this big number, because you've got some really, really exciting horses in against him. I don't think this Darlinghurst should be taken too lightly. He's got a bunch of ones next to his name, which will obviously appeal to a lot of people, but there's some substance there, isn't there, too, to his form. That latest Group 3 win at Chantilly. The runner-up there was First Look. He was just beaten a length. He was beaten a couple of lengths in the Prix de Jockey Club, went second there just the other Sunday to the horse who's now favourite for the Arc. So there's substance to Darlinghurst's form. He's an interesting one from France. Henry Longfellow. He never really got within sort of striking distance, hailing distance in the French Guineas, but we all know that the opinion that he's held in, he's bred to be an absolute champion. Whether he's going to be quite quick enough, he's another Dubawi, isn't he? Whether he's going to be quick enough to sort of certainly match up with Notable Speech, his turn of foot is a big question mark. Soft ground might bring him into it. Soft ground could also potentially bring into this Ed Walker's Heron Stakes winner, the Almakam. They've not missed with his entries, have they? He's in the Irish Derbies, in the Coral Eclipse, Sussex Irish champion. I think he's a horse going places. He was quite impressive there. Again, might not have the gears of these Guineas horses. And then you've got lead artist, the Gosden horse. Gosden's have won this race with the odd sort of sleeper in the past, come into it with horses kind of under the radar. Without Parole, Palace Pier won a handicap en route to winning this, and in a normal year you would say that he could be quite interesting. He's quite a big price lead artist. I don't know if he's been confirmed for the race or whether they're going to look elsewhere, but he was dead impressive, won easily 4 and a bit lengths at York on his second run, having looked unlucky at the Craven meeting on debut. So he's a horse of potential as well. But yeah, Notable Speech, without question, the horse to beat, and I think he's going to be really well suited to Ascot.
Dave, you won't publicise it, so I will. There will be a Cunningham Files this weekend for Royal Ascot, and I'm going to do a little section on the rematches. I think that's the compelling angle in the St James's Palace year on year, and I've dug out quite a few from 2000. Couldn't be asked going any further back than that. But the reversals include 04, Halved, and Billy Azamore, one of your old favourites. Azamore reversed the Guineas form when they went to Royal Ascot. Another reversal, McPhee and Canford Cliffs, 1st and 3rd at Newmarket, 1st and 7th in favour of Canford Cliffs at Ascot. Night of Thunder and Kingman, who can forget that? Night of Thunder for Fallon at Newmarket, Kingman and Doyle, the Doyler, as he went past the post at Royal Ascot. And another reversal, Churchill and Barney Roy. So that's a relatively fresh in the mind. And the confirmations, Henry the Navigator and Ravens Pass, they met every 20 minutes during that season. Ravens eventually got his revenge twice, but Henry was the master early on in the season. Frankel and Dubawi Gold. Frankel managed to confirm the 4 at Royal Ascot.
Only just, thanks to Tom Quealy.
Dawn Approach and Toronado. Dawn Approach in between had run a nutty race in the Derby, but still confirmed the form at Royal Ascot. And another confirmation, this is another classic Jolly Jim Bolger. Poetic Flair and Lucky Vega, 1st and 2nd at Newmarket, 1st and 3rd at Royal Ascot. Oh, and by the way, Poetic Flair had taken in the French Guineas and something else in between, I think.
And the Irish Guineas as well, I think.
And the Irish Guineas. So then were the days when Jim Bolger had good ones. They ran hard and fast. So there can be reversals. and round 2 of Notable Speech and Rosalia should be a crackerjack.
And Billy, I just want your view on Henry Longfellow. He looked brilliant times as a 2-year-old. Satisfactory return. This a big day for him?
Well, sure, it was only a piece of work in the French Guineas, according to Aidan, so we can put a line through that, apparently.
He did meet
yeah,
a lot of traffic, Billy, didn't he? He did.
He did, yeah.
solid
He
run,
never got into the race at all. So, yeah, you can safely put a line through it. His 2-year-old form, Dave, you can take, there's 2 ways of looking at it. He beat the same horse twice, Islands in the Stream of Joseph O'Brien's, who we haven't seen this year, but who was
he's
good
winning
enough.
in Hong Kong, Billy. He's
Is that where he is?
Speech. He won a good race in Hong Kong last weekend.
Oh, well, there you go, yeah. Like, he won a valuable sales race in France last year and finished second in the Group 1 to Los Angeles. So form is pretty solid, you'd have to say. I'd agree with Matt. I think if the ground comes up soft, I think he might just need an ease in the ground to be fully effective at this trip. I always thought he was going to stretch out and trip this year, but I think he wants it a little bit on the soft side, whereas Aidan's other runner, Unquestionable, will want it rattling fast. I mean, he wants real quick ground. Didn't run too badly in the Irish Guineas. He probably needed that run. He was, he'd had a setback during the winter, so he can improve on that, but he'll need to improve to make his presence felt in this race.
Now, David, talking of rematches, in the 1,000 Guineas at Newmarket, it was one of those rare races where there was more debate afterwards than there was going into it. The winner, Almalka's turning up. She's not favourite. The Irish 1,000 Guineas winner isn't favourite. The favourite's Opera Singer, who was placed in that race for Aidan O'Brien. I mean, there's 5 or 6, 7 prominent in the betting for the Coronation Stakes. Tricky puzzle. Just solve it for us, please, DJ.
It's a cracking race, isn't it, if they all turn up? And it is looking like they might. I see that Carl Burke has sort of gone cold on the idea of going to the French Oaks with Fallen Angel. So she looks like she should come here. And I think she's the one that probably does deserve to be favourite. She was so good as a 2-year-old. And obviously everything, well, not quite everything, but things didn't go completely away at Newmarket. But she very much got back on the up to win the Irish Guineas. And I think that has to be considered the best piece of form coming into the race. And like I said, I think she deserves to be favourite. Opera Singer, obviously, if you go back to what she was doing as a 2-year-old, but I thought she was a bit disappointing in the Irish 1,000 Guineas. I know it was a reappearance, and we are seeing quite the theme, aren't we, with O'Brien's horses coming on a ton for that, but it's a relatively quick turnaround, and it's just so factored into the odds, and it's not like this is shaping up into be a weakish race. You've got Ramatui in there, who I think is going to obviously be suited by a slightly more patient ride than at Newmarket, and with going round bend, that'll obviously put the emphasis less on stamina than it was. So this is just an absolute cracking race. I'd be with Fallen Angel at the moment, but I just hope they all turn up and we get to see them, and it's a fair race, and we see that pecking order begin to come clearer.
GC, you were Team Ramatui at Newmarket. Oisin Murphy, we spoke to him earlier. He's on board at Ascot. Is that a positive?
Yeah, I think it is. Lemaitre didn't shine at Newmarket. The fractions were hard, as we all know, and then he kicked in the dip. And we have to think she proved her stamina, no problem. But that turn of foot is highly likely to be better deployed later. But like David, I just think Fallen Angel's a really good filly. You have to give her a pass on what happened at Newmarket, but the zest was right back in evidence in Ireland, and she won with real authority. So at a longer price than Opera Singer, I have to be with Fallen Angel. I am of the mind I'll be red-faced if Amalka wins, because I think she's flattered by the Newmarket result. That race was set up for the horses who came from well off the pace, and I'm not sure she'll be anything like as effective on a round mile at Ascot, especially if they don't go a hard gallop. So I'm against Amalka. I'm pro Fallen Angel and Ramatwell, and I'm like David, I'm slightly lukewarm on Opera Singer. I thought she looked terrific at Longchamp, but she needs to find 5 lengths to beat Fallen Angel, let alone the rest. So at that price, it's Fallen Angel with a saver on Ramatwell for me.
Is she going to come forward a big chunk, Billy, do you think, Opera Singer?
I would expect her to, Dave. Now, as the lads have pointed out, she certainly needs to. And yeah, the betting is a little bit strange in that regard, because Fallen Angel did nothing wrong with the course. She was very impressive herself. Now, I do think that Opera Singer will improve quite a bit. Aidan was very open about her during the year that she was going to miss Newmarket and was going to be a rush to get her back in time for the Curragh. I thought she ran perfectly well with that in mind on the day. She did seem to fade out of things a little bit late on, so I would expect her to get to come forward, but she'll need to beat Fallen Angel, who did nothing wrong on the day. This, for me, Dave, is the race of the week. I think it's an absolute cracker, this. You've got I think the French Guineas winner is coming as well, isn't she? So you'll have the Irish, English and French Guineas winners in the race, as well as placed horses from both races as well. So it looks an absolute cracker to me. I'm going to just sit and watch for the time being. I haven't made up my mind what way I'm going to go on this yet.
Have you made up your mind, Matt? As Bucksby's very nearly sang.
Got the value here, Dave.
Oh, here we go. Already snared, or is it going? Is this a points job?
More points?
There's a good chance we've got the value here. She does need to be confirmed for the race. Romantic Style. Charlie Appleby's horse. There was a part of me who was thinking that they might run this Devoted Queen. Is it Michael Seeley winner, the one from York? Beaten filly, but I think rumor has it that Romantic Style is going to be coming here. I almost had a kind of penciled in for a drop to 7 furlongs in the Jersey Stakes, but she actually won that Prix and Prudence, the race that worked out really well with Ramatuelle and Tamfana in behind, and then she got the absolute coffin draw in the French Guineas. She was 14, out wide, did too much too soon, came across, and she was beaten less than a length. She was 4th in the end. It was a proper blanket finish job. But if she comes here for this coronation, I think she could be in business. She's about 16-1. She's totally overlooked. She's got that Group 1 form. I think she's the value here at the minute. Opera Singer blew me away last year. If she's back to that form that she showed in France, that was just like, you kind of thought she's going to win classics, didn't you, when you saw her win that over Art Weekend last year. But she's going to have to step forward, and I think this is a bigger price. This Romantic Style, I'm interested, Dave.
I take that point, Matt. All those points are right. I would be a bit worried that Vespertilio, Irish raider, ran a similar race to Romantic Style in France, and she didn't exactly polish the form in Ireland, did she, behind Fallen Angel and company?
No, she's another speedy one, isn't she? Pace.
Let's talk sprinters. A lovely segue into the sprinting season. David, Big Evs, wonderful story. Fantastic horse, wins at York, favourite for the King's Stand. I go on my time form race passes, and I see he's £8 off the season gunslingers at the top of those ratings. Is he a false favourite?
I think he is, yeah. I mean, we obviously have to point out that as a 3-year-old, he hasn't had quite the opportunity to run to the kind of racings that those established older horses have done in the same way. So factor that in, but equally it is a case of that he does have a fair bit to find still, and the market is just as we expect. It always factors in the potential improvement with these lightly raced horses, doesn't it? So he's not been missed. I was going to call it the King Stand, the King Charles. It's just never the kind of race where you want to get stuck into one at a shortish price, is it? Yes. They're going to take just over a minute to run. Anything that slightly goes wrong, it's going to cost you your chance of winning. And there's just so many in here that you could give a squeak to that you just have to start looking at those that are at the slightly bigger odds, I think, and just think that maybe they're the ones to go with rather than those at their short price.
I won't shame the colleague who thought King Charles III was the fellow Oliver Cromwell was tussling with all those years ago. GC, Big Evs is favourite. There are some of those older sprinters around, and 1 or 2 bubbling away quite nicely going into it. Yeah,
Regional's got better form than Big Evs. Now, Big Evs is still a young horse, and he might still be improving, but I think I'm right in saying that Big Evs is 114 time form, and I think I'm right in saying that Regional's 120. That's a fair gap, considering Regional is a bigger price. Keep an eye on the weather for him. I wouldn't back him until I know that the ground's good or slightly faster than good. They're his ideal conditions, but that's a good horse now. And the bar in the sprints, as we all know, is not set especially high nowadays. 5 furlongs and 6 furlongs. And Regional's Haydock win, he broke through, was it the first or second time of asking in Group 1 company at Haydock? And then I thought he ran a screamer first time out in the Greenland Stakes, Group 2 at the Curragh, where he was in the heat of a very, very strong pace right from the start, and he only gave best to a very cannily ridden Mitbahi right at the death. So I think a stiff 5 at Ascot is bang right. He's consistent, uncomplicated, and he would be the one for me, provided it doesn't rain hard. But as David said, it is a lot of horses separated by a few pounds, but Regional's best numbers at Haydock and at the Curragh give him a really clear chance in this race.
Billy, any thoughts on the King's Stand?
Well, from an Irish point of view, there won't be that many in it. Aidan might run Aesop's Fables. Moss Tucker might go off the ground as soft, and if the ground is soft, he'll probably run well because that's what he does. Again, I'd be agreeing with the lads about Big Evs. I think he has plenty to find. I think I'm right in saying Lady Aurelia was the last 3-year-old to win this, wasn't she? Lady Aurelia had a time form rating of 127.
Bradsell won it last year, yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot about him. Lady Aurelia was 127 with the fillies allowance. So I mean, she was a hell of a lot better than Big Evs as a 2-year-old. I think he has plenty to find. I'd be inclined to go against him. I'd be very interested to see what sort of a performance Crimson Advocate would put up, though. Another 2-year-old has joined the John Tady Gosden from George Weaver, so she adds a little bit of intrigue to the race, I think.
And Matt, we've already got podcast points banked here. Scoop was that angry having missed Kurdos when he went Haydock. He put out a very quick column on Sporting Live tipping him for this. He's very sweet. Has he won you over with his arguments?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't want to step on his toes at all, Dave. This is a good horse, isn't it? And Clive Cox, with these sort of later maturing sprinters, he always was saying all along with his horse, even at the back end of his 2-year-old season, he was kind of saying late next year, and even as a 4-year-old, he's going to be top class. And you've got to respect him. He looked really good last time. I wouldn't completely rule out his stablemate either if they're going to run Diligent Harry here. Now, he's a horse that looks to have improved as a 6-year-old, speaking of Cox and these kind of late maturers. And he was putting in some good numbers on the all-weather enlisted races at the start of the year. He went to Meydan, ran a really big race, beating a length in the Alcoz. And then he was only beating a neck in that real tight bunch finish in the Duke of York. And he's a huge price. He's 25-1. And then loads and loads to consider in here. I'm not totally giving up hope yet. If it came up quite quick, Rogue Lightning, Wathnan obviously might mention them later. You know, this time last year, a small boutique operation that no one even knew who was behind them, buying absolutely everything under the sun. This Rogue Lightning was bought for £1 million towards the back end of last year, and it's kind of made a few people sit up and take note. And it turns out that that's probably small fry compared to what they've been paying for some of these horses this time around. But it's pretty clear he's being trained and has been targeted for this 1 week of the year. And he ran okay, probably found the ground a little bit soft at Haydock when beaten by Kurdos. So I expect him to come forward as well. I'm not giving up on him. Asfura ran all right as well. She probably wasn't at home on the soft ground there. So yeah, loads and loads to consider. And if you like Crimson Advocate, then Relief Rally's got to be in the mix as well. She was only narrowly denied in the Queen Mary. A 3-year-old filly getting the weight, and her record over 5 furlongs is terrific. Really, really good. She's won 3 and just beaten a nose in last year's Queen Mary.
Let's face it, they've just beat each other this lot, and it's true in the 6 furlong division as well. So pay your money, take your choice. But there's a length and a half, couple of lengths between 8, 9, 10 horses.
Good fun though, isn't it, GC? Let's not be down about it.
Oh, it is. So listen, it won't stop me trying to find a bet. The bar is not set at proper Group 1 levels these days in the sprint.
No.
And JC, it's 6 is the field in the Saturday, the 6 furlong race. It's also 5's the field in the Commonwealth Cup for the 3-year-olds. And it's a similar story there. We don't quite know what to expect, but it's a fascinating renewal. Inisherin, Van Dijk, Elite Say, we touched on it last week. That's a stellar renewal of this race.
That looks potentially a good one. Yeah, we're surprised if at least one proper Group 1 horse doesn't emerge from that lot. I was very impressed with Inisherin, both in the paddock and in the race at Haydock. He's not got a completely consistent record, but I was really impressed with Elite Status. That's his name, isn't it? At Newbury. He won a pretty good Carnarvon Stakes in handsome style. It's too early to be knocking Van Dijk after that Haydock defeat. But no, it just looks a really good race. I was looking at the Saturday race. It's not called the Diamond Jubilee anymore. It's called the QE2 Jubilee, I think. And there was one horse I thought might be worth a second look. And Billy will know about him. He didn't really go the right way on his last couple of starts for Johnny Murtagh, Shartash. But he's looked good, really good. And his first 2 wins for Archie Watson, both over 7 furlongs, Thirsk and Haydock. But he's gone like a horse who might even be better over 6 furlongs. And he's the type of horse I could see running really well a week on Saturday.
Another Wathnan buy?
Well, and that's been one of the stories of the build-up, David, hasn't it? The Wathnam shop is for strength in depth with their 2-year-olds. I think we can, like Matt touched upon it, the boutique operation we were expecting this time last year has been expanded and expanded significantly. And given that it's the Emir of Qatar who's behind it, you wouldn't quite know where this will end.
No, exactly. Shartash was one of, I think they've got Torito for the Wolferton. I think they've got a few more from Archie Watson as well. And obviously the big one is Hartem, who obviously danced every dance so far, won the Craven, and then acquitted himself really well in the Guineas at Newmarket and obviously in Ireland. And I think he's going to drop back in trip to go for the Jersey, where he could meet River Tiber. And I think that's also where... what's the Carl Burke horse that was a second coming that disappointed in the Guineas?
Night Raider.
Night Raider, yeah. I think he's going for the Jersey as well. And dropping back to 7 furlongs looks like it'll suit him really well. So I think the Jersey is shaping up to be a more interesting race than what it often is. But yeah, Wathnam, they're spending an absolute fortune, aren't they? And James Doyle is certainly going to have a really good book of rides on virtually every day, I think.
Be interested to see what colour caps they go with for runners 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's new for them, isn't it? We wonder if it'll go down the JP. Anyway, that's just one to ponder. Now, talking of second comings, Billy Nash, Gold Cup, Kyprios, short price favourite. Are we sure this is the Kyprios we saw in his peak?
We're not sure that he is, Dave, but my question would be, does he need to be? I'm not sure that he will need to be the horse he was 2 years ago to win this Gold Cup. I don't think it's a particularly deep race. Obviously, he has looked good in his 2 prep runs this year, but they were against inferior opposition. They're races you would have expected him to win. He's got a time form rating of 128 from the Prix de Cadran a couple of years ago, where he was so impressive. But he only ran to 123, winning the Gold Cup that year. He got very close to that figure in the Long Distance Cup last year, when he was just chinned by Trawlerman after an epic battle. And I think if he runs to something like that sort of level, low 120s again this year, I think that might be good enough to win this Gold Cup. And I think he's well capable of doing that. Obviously, Trawlerman, it could be one of his main dangers. You've got the likes of Coltrane, who kind of runs, he runs his race every day. He'll go close. Vauban is a very interesting runner, but I'd be surprised if he got the trip, to be honest. I think 2.5 is really going to stretch him. Similar comments apply to Absurd. And then you look down through the field and you've got the likes of, Trushan. Will he, won't he run? We'll see what the ground does. Gregory's in the race, but he's been a bit disappointing since last year when he looked so good at this meeting last year. He's got a little bit to prove now, I think. And I think all in all, it's just a race that's maybe not as deep as we kind of hoped it might be. And I think Kyprios back up to 2.5. I can't see him beaten. He's an odds-on favourite, and I think he deserves to be.
Surprised you're not a little bit warmer on Vauban, Billy. He's still got potential when you look back to how impressive he was at this meeting last year.
He was, but I'd just be concerned about the trip, GC.
Right.
I think the trip beat him in the Melbourne Cup, to be honest.
Yeah.
I didn't think he got home over 2 miles. He won a 1.5 mile grades or Group 3 at Naas last year. I think he's got plenty of pace, and I think 2.5 is just a step too far for him.
Is this a race, GC? And it's a rare one, this particular Royal Ascot, that does revolve around one horse?
Well, I'm not convinced Kyprios is that powerful stayer we saw 2 years ago. I think his BHAN time form ratings would reflect that he's not hit that level just yet this season. But it could well be that, they were just prep races and he was doing no more than enough. And, he's got a tremendous record when he's fully healthy. But I couldn't be taking that short a price. Coltrane shouldn't really be winning this, but I suspect he'll run well at the biggest price again. He was second to Courage Mon Ami last year, and the advisor he wore in the Cigaro seemed to perk him up. I dread to think what's going to happen if that Keys Chorister wins with that crazy, what's his name, Clive Washburn.
Yeah.
He will go absolutely apeshit if that wins, won't he?
Eanes.
What it, Matt, you were nodding. Was that with Coltrane? Is that an angle of yours into the race? Or did I misjudge your body language?
No, you've judged it. I think I'd go a step further than GC, and I'd be looking to maybe lay Kyprios in the run. I think he's really short. Obviously that he's talented. I just wonder if you go back through this horse's career, if you go back as a 3-year-old, he was a little bit tricky, wasn't he? They slapped cheap pieces on him when he came over for the Lingfield Derby trial, and he put in a bit of a shocker. He actually came to Royal Ascot for the Queen's Vase, and he played up at the start of the stalls and had to be withdrawn, and then you know, he spent a year off, emerged, came on the back of that year off, and just took the absolute the staying world by storm. And I just wonder if that's sort of, he's getting a bit clever again now. You know, he's getting on a little bit. Aidan's actually mentioned himself that he kind of, you know, he just gets there and just does enough. I actually wonder in the on Champions Day, I mean, Frankie gave Trollerman a fantastic ride, but was Kyprios really putting it in? Did he sort of wait for a bit of company? I'd be a little bit worried about this. And Coltrane is just the sort of horse you'd want on side, I think. Again, with Oisin Murphy, like, you want to see a really clever ride from this horse. I don't want him to give Kyprios a toe deep into the race. I'd love to see Coltrane just let Kyprios go on the bend, a bit like Trollerman did, and I think he's going to have every chance of running him down. I just don't think Kyprios quite wants to go through that pain barrier again. We'll see. I mean, I've taken on plenty of Aidan horses over the years at short prices and been embarrassed afterwards, but there's a little niggle with this horse, a little nag, and if you're taking a short price, I'd happily put up, you know, 1.2, 1 point, you know, a short price in the run and maybe look to try and get him beat.
He's priced like he's definitely still the horse of old, and we can't be sure about that. A correction on Coltrane, it was cheap pieces he wore at Ascot, not a visor.
Can I just be a bit more complimentary towards the chances of Gregory than what Billy was? And I just think the key thing with this horse is he's going to get a real test of stamina for pretty much the first time since the Queen's Vase, when he was so impressive at the meeting last year. After that, he went to the Voltigeur, and they just rode him from the front over 1.5 miles, and that just wasn't right for him. And I thought he just looked a little bit slow, really, in the Leger. And then the Yorkshire Cup, I just don't think it was the way that the race was run there suited him particularly well, kept to 1.75 miles. And I think it's a case that everything has been pinned around him peaking for going up in trip now over 2 miles plus. And obviously, I think Kyprios is vulnerable. Given what we've seen of him this year, he looked really good on his reappearance. I thought, oh, he has turned over a new leaf. But then it was the same old Kyprios, so taking plenty of driving last time. So I don't mind taking him on at that sort of price. And for me, it's Gregory that's going to improve, stepping up in trip.
Before we move on, can I touch on a Aidan horse who's coming back from a lengthy break? I cannot wait to see Continuous in the Hardwick Stakes on Saturday. I think he'll be a short price, but I don't think that horse has been given quite enough recognition for what he did in the latter part of last season. I thought he bolted up in the Voltigeur. I thought he bolted up in the St. Leger, and I thought he ran a terrific race despite a choppy run in the Arc. So all the hype for the 4-year-olds from Ballydoyle has been around August Rodin this year. I think Continuous might be the one to really fly that 4-year-old flag. What do you think, Billy?
I think I'm right in saying, GC, that his campaign has been geared around the Tilted Japan Cup. He's by Heart's Cry, and I think I heard somewhere that they want to have a crack at the Japan Cup with him, and I think that's probably why he's starting so late.
Yeah, he was withdrawn with a slight setback, wasn't he, from last year's Japan Cup, fairly late in the piece. I saw a quote the other day that we're working back from the Arc, but so an autumn campaign looks to go. But I'll be really disappointed if he's not a big player in the Hardwick.
Oh, I'd agree with you. I think he's a proper horse, yeah.
I was going to say earlier, if you're looking for podcasts where you end up with egg on your face by taking on an O'Brien Shorty, you're listening to the wrong podcast. But Billy, August Rodin, let's look at this Prince of Wales Stakes on the Wednesday. It's the rematch with White Birch. Is he going to get his revenge?
I don't think he will, Dave, to be perfectly honest. I didn't see enough in the Curragh run to suggest that he could reverse this form with White Birch. I thought he was beaten fair and square on the day, and I thought he was well and truly put in his place, to be honest. I was very impressed with White Birch. He looks like a horse that's much more professional this time around. I think he has grown up. I think he's matured, and I think he's developed into the racehorse that they hoped he would be this time last year. He was, you know, he came there, he cruised up behind Auguste Rodin and just left him standing at the Curragh, and I think Ascot will suit him really well. I see lots of people are saying that the ground is an issue. Now, he has improved on softer ground this year, but he had plenty of form on quick ground last year, so I wouldn't necessarily let that put me off if I was going to back him. And I think he'll beat Auguste Rodin again. I think Auguste Rodin has plenty to prove now at this stage, and I think White Birch is the one they'll all have to beat here.
Is it just a head-to-head GC, the two?
Perhaps not. I should mention the ground. White Birch, I think, would definitely relish a bit of rain before then. Gus might, be a better horse if it gets good to firm, which I think is a shade unlikely for Wednesday. I will put in a good word at a big price. He won't get much love in the market if he comes. The French horse Horizon d'Or, and he's lost his last 6. But there just once or twice, including last time when he flashed a bit of genuine Group 1 quality. He came back to his best last time in a tactical race in France, and I wonder if he might be the type of horse who could run well again at Ascot. Don't forget he was a really good. Was he third in the Champion Stakes last year? Yeah, he was third to King of Steel. He did a bit wrong that day, so I think he's the type of long shot you could factor in as to add a bit of value here and there. Keep an eye on him.
Right, it's time. The time is nearly beaten us. It's that sort of meeting to get plenty more we could have got stuck into. David, before we go, is there anything else this early stage on your radar? 2-year-old handicappers? Anything that you're looking towards for next week?
Yeah, there's a couple of handicappers. Must mention Al Bashir again, who has a mark of 100 in the Wokingham, which is, I think, £10 lower than what his all-weather mark is for his improvement over the winter, which I'm not convinced is definitely only surface related. But I was a little bit disappointed with his run back on turf in a French Group 2 last time, so that has sort of worried me a little bit. So I want to take another bullet in the Wokingham, and the one that I like in that race is Strike Red, who I think has been to Ascot just the once in his life and was beaten a neck, but everything about him is crying out that Ascot will suit him down to the ground. He's a horse that tends to be held up, come with a late rattle, and the stiffish finish at Ascot, I think, will play to his strengths. He can look a little bit ungainly. He's got a bit of an awkward head carriage, but I don't think he's ungenuine as such. And I was encouraged by how well he ran at Epsom on Derby Day in that 6-furlong race there, going on really nicely at the finish. And like I say, I just think if he gets a decent draw, I think he's about 33 to 1 for the Wokingham at the minute. And Richard Fahey, we know what he can do with these sprint handicappers, and I think he's a horse that's still of potential and well enough handicap for a race like this.
Great stuff. Matt, anything else for you?
A good word for that 2-year-old Andesite, Carl Burke's horse. I thought he was good. He's obviously come out. The form looks decent. Looms won, hasn't he, for Richard Fahey since. And the runner-up, they pulled, 3 and a bit lengths clear that day. Yar Moby there, he's about 16 to 1, the runner-up for the Coventry, and I thought he could be quite interesting if they decide to throw him into that. I will mention a handicapper as well, if I've got time, Dave. In the Royal Hunt Cup, now it's Royal Hunt Cup and it's a mile handicap, David O'Mara, but he's got a horse that's totally unheard of in the dartboard silks. I'm going to struggle to pronounce it, but it's Padishak, something along those lines. Anyway,
Never heard of him.
They've spent 200 grand getting him out of France, and last spring he was second to Big Rock. He was favourite to beat Big Rock in a Group 3 at Longchamp, and he's only had 2 runs for 2 runs in Britain. One of them was for Roger Varian in the Nurlan Bizakov silks, but he's now been bought by O'Meara's lot, and he's had the 1 run behind Sharon at Doncaster, well beaten, but he's creeping down the weights. At some stage he's going to pop up in a big handicap. So that is Padishak, Dave. Padishak at 50 to 1 in the Royal Hunt Cup.
Matt's 2 horses for the Hunt Cup there. GC, anything else for you for Ascot?
It's not a recommended bet. I love the Coventry Stakes. I'm not sure the likely favourite, Camille Pissarro, is a superstar. I'm really looking forward to seeing Joseph's horse, Coward of the County, a massive unit, well over 500 kilograms already, apparently. And his current debut, clear of Whistle Jacket, who didn't get home under the conditions, was impressive. And I just get the vibe that Joseph thinks he's got a pretty good one there. And Whistle Jacket himself in the Norfolk will be a pretty tight price, but he's looked made for a race like that. So 2-year races are always super informative at Royal Ascot, and next week will be no exception. So Coward of the County and Whistle Jacket, 1 for Aidan, 1 for Joseph.
Last but not least, Billy, anything extra from you?
I'm going to give you 2 names very quickly, Dave. Speaking of names, we know how Ballydoyle like to give their better horses good names. And if that's the case, they've got a potential superstar on their hands in the Queen's Vase, horse called Highbury. Really impressive in a maiden at Leopardstown, won by 7.5 lengths. The second and the fourth have come out from that race and won since. I think the step up and triple really suit him. If he runs in the Queen's Vase, I'm definitely going to be with him. And I'm playing slightly fast and loose with my New Year's resolution here, Dave, because I promised never to tip a non-Irish trained horse. But I'm going to go for one in the Sandringham, who was trained in Ireland, but has been bought and is going down under to Australia. Filly called Kitty Rose. She was with Natalia Lupini. She's been bought to go to Mick Price and Michael Kent in Australia. Her form stacks up really well, Dave. Even her reappearance effort, she was second in the Guineas trial at Leopardstown to a Lilac Rolla with Buttons back behind her. They finished second and fourth in the Irish Guineas. I think if Kitty Rose runs in the Sandringham, she's the one they'll all have to beat.
I think she's another Oisin Murphy mount, isn't she?
I think she is, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
And there we are. Thanks to Oisin, who was on earlier with Ben, Matt, GC, David and Billy. There are early thoughts of the Royal Ascot talking points. We'll be back next week to preview the great meeting itself.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion and tips.